as a leader, a manager, CEO, whatever, it is part of your responsibility. If you want a culture that is fun and people want to show up and work, that is part of your responsibility. And I think one of the easiest ways is to show empathy and to be open and saying, let's put our people first. Let's give them the tools so that they can succeed. And that's where the profit happens.
Welcome to the Learn It All podcast, the show for today's leaders who want to get ahead and stay ahead, because we believe great leaders aren't born or made, they're always in the making. I'm your host, Damon Lembi, 3-time best-selling author and CEO of Learn It, a live learning platform that has helped upskill over 2 million people. Joining me in a moment is Greg Kettner, a former comedian turned high-energy keynote speaker, sales expert, podcast host, and he's the founder of Work Happy, an organization dedicated to building mentally healthy and engaging workplaces. Greg's personal mission is to help people feel comfortable talking about mental health and make it part of everyday leadership conversations. Greg's a great guy, and I can't wait to get into this conversation because we're going to talk about things like why burnout and loneliness are so dangerous, even at the top of the organization. Greg's a big believer that humor can build trust, connection, and even retention within teams. Why the goal shouldn't be happiness with your organization, it's to be happier and how you can make space for that. And last but not least, how to lead with empathy without losing your edge.
So Greg, what did Robin Williams tell you that changed how you see work forever?
He told me to always make people happy and make them laugh, because you'll never know the difference you'll make in their lives. And he said, you know what? We're lucky if we get to see that from time to time, but there's thousands of people that I've been in front of that I will never know the outcome. But when you make them happy, it's magical. And that stood with me. That was, probably 15 years ago. And that's why I started Work Happy, is to do that for other people.
And let's just start there. Walk us through that story. I love that story.
It was a random story. I grew up listening to comedy records. My dad had records and we'd wear out the records. So there's a lot of laughter on our house. And I got dared one night when I was working for the Vancouver Canucks. We were walking by a pub and they had an open mic. And they said, well, Greg, you're good at telling jokes. You should get up there. I'm like, no. Because I can tell a street joke, but I would never get up and publicly speak. And so we started listening to the comedy. And they started thinking, well, you're funnier than that guy. You're funnier than that girl. And then I started thinking, yeah, I am. So after a couple of beers, they encouraged me to go up, and I did 5 minutes, loved it. And I started doing stand-up comedy. And about 6 months later, I was opening for at a comedy club and doing different things. And we had an open mic one night. It was a Tuesday, 7:00 show. There's a 9:00 show for the professionals. And at the 7:00 show, there was 5 comedians, 1 girlfriend, and a bartender. So nobody had to pay to get in. Empty room. And I was third on the bill that night. Halfway through my set, the door opened up in this pub, and in walked my hero, Robin Williams. And in my head, I was like, oh, my God, that's Robin Williams. And he came and sat down and grabbed a beer, and he started watching and laughing. And as I walked off stage, I'm like, wow, how am I going to connect with a hero? So like, oh, can I get an autograph, or can I get a picture? And so I decided I was going to pretend that I had no idea who he was. And it worked. I grabbed a beer, sat down beside him and said, hey, I'm Greg. He's like, hey, I'm Robin. I said, what are you doing here in town? We're in Vancouver, British Columbia. And he said, I'm working on a movie. I'm like, well, that sounds like a lot of fun. Are you the camera guy? You do catering? And he looked at me like, how the hell is John Goodman? I have no idea who I am. And I just kept it going as long as I could, asking this and that. And I said, well, what movie are you working? And it was Night at the Museum. And he goes, yeah, well, I'm working with Ben Stiller. And I upped my game. And I'm like, oh, I love Ben Stiller. Everybody loves Ben Stiller. He was so frustrated. And so finally I said, I know who you are. I'm a huge fan. I just wanted to connect and be different. And so we had this conversation. And he said, keep doing what you're doing, man. You'll never know the difference you make in someone's life by making them laugh. He goes, you'll never see it probably. If you do get a chance to see it. And I said, that's great. So we watched the end of the show, and towards the end of the show, the guy running the room came up and asked him, said, hey, we'd love it if you did 15, 20 minutes at the end of the show, the 9 o'clock show. And so I asked Rob, I'm like, do you have 15 or 20 minutes? He's like, John Goodman, I got this covered. So he went up at 10 o'clock and he went till 12:30. The pub is packed. The bouncers are charging $20. There's people outside. One of the best nights of my life. And afterwards, he came up to me. He said, thank you for treating me like a regular human being. I never get that. And he said, again, keep making people laugh, dude. It's amazing. Got a picture, and he walked out, got on his bike, and took off. And I had a chance to see him a couple of times afterwards, and we reconnected and hit a photographic memory. But that's always stuck with me. And when I started speaking and talking about mental health and how to work happy and be happy, that's one of the core stories I tell, because here's a guy who made millions of people happy, was one of the funniest people that's ever walked the world, and he passed by suicide. There were demons that he had. And when I first started talking about mental health, I was starting to kick myself and going, man, I wish I could have had the conversation with him now and said, hey, have you tried therapy, or what's really going on? But I can't. I mean, what happens. That's in the past. But now I made it a mission. Everybody I meet, whether it's a stranger or a friend, just ask them, how are you doing? And typically, I don't know about you, Damon, but, if you ask somebody, how are you doing? They're like, oh, good. Ask the question again. How are you really doing? I got 5 minutes. Let's go for a coffee. So that's the Robin Williams story, and I'm sticking to it.
No, it's a wonderful story. And the first thing that came to mind when I heard that, your TED talk was great. I love the 3 stories you told.
Thank you.
But if I was there on the stage and my idol like that walked in, did you freeze at all? Like, was it harder for you to tell jokes because Robin Williams was there, or did you just keep going?
I don't know. The adrenaline kicked in. I'm like, oh my God, here's my hero. And so I just finished my, the last couple of fart and poop jokes that I had and walked off stage, and I was just like, well, it is what it is. Like, now there was 2 audience members. Like, I was at least going to be 50% good. But yeah, I didn't really have that weird feeling. I was just like, okay, let's keep doing what we're doing.
And that is such a nice story about Robin Williams. I live probably 10 minutes from where he passed away, and I used to see him around town quite a bit. And I never reached out to him or anything like that, but I heard nothing but nice stories about him. I've seen him live several times, and what a great moment for you that you've been able to carry on.
Yeah.
Speaking of your work, what would the world look like if people were working happier?
You know what? If we're happy at work, I mean, we all remember the first time, and you remember this, we've all had great jobs and bad jobs, and great bosses and bad bosses. But, for the people who are listening, remember that job where you walked in on the first day and everything was great. I remember one of the best jobs I ever had. I was working for the Vancouver Canucks with NHL. I walked in the first day, I had 2 dozen Krispy Kreme donuts. And, I mean, it wasn't me, it was the donuts, obviously. But I remember that feeling where everybody was around you and things were great. There wasn't a bad day or a bad client or a bad conversation or whatever. But when we're happy, we're more productive. We're up to 20% more productive. We're less likely to leave our job. We make more money. We have more friends. And there's less conflict. Even our communication is better when we're in a good mood. So everything is better. And to be happy, it doesn't cost, it doesn't cost a bonus. I was just reading a study a couple months ago where the younger generation coming up now would rather feel like they matter, that their voice is heard, that they have input, than a $10,000 raise. Because that's where we're at. We spend a third of our life working, a lot of us, more than a third, more than 8 hours a day. But when we're happy, not only our lives are better, our mental health is better. And like I said, we're more productive and we make more money, and the company makes more money as well.
Yeah, these days, there's a lot of studies, and I've seen it firsthand, that people want to work at places where they feel like they have purpose, that they belong, they can make a difference besides just making money. But I also had a conversation with a friend the other day who left her job because she wasn't super happy. She thought she wasn't super happy. She took a job somewhere else. And now she said, Damon, I didn't realize the grass isn't greener on the other side.
Right.
Do you ever run into those types of situations? And how do you help somebody reflect to see that maybe they should really judge where they are when it comes to happiness before jumping ship like she did? Because now she doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, no, and I have had instances. I was speaking at it was a retirement home. So a friend of mine was director of the retirement home, almost funeral home, which would be weird, directing dead people. But he had a nurse, and she came to him one day and she said, you know what, I've got an offer to work at another nursing home. It's $2 an hour more. I love it here. I would love to stay. Is there any way that you can give me that raise, because I need it for my family? I've got a lot of kids. And he didn't go into specifics. He said, you know what, we don't have the budget. He said, but if the other place doesn't work out, or if you need a referral or whatever thing, I'm happy to do that for you because we love you and the work that you do. And he said within 48 hours, she called him up and said, you know what, I can't stand it there. There's no culture. I'm just a number and all this. And he said, welcome back. Right. So there are things like that. But I think if someone is listening and they haven't found their purpose, or they're not joyful, I think work exacerbates the feelings that we have. So I encourage people to look in. What is the cause of your unhappiness at work? Is it a coworker that you can't get along with? Is it the job you're doing? Or maybe it's something at home. Maybe your kids are struggling in school, or maybe you're fighting, surmounting debt or a relationship with your partner. But take the time and reflect inwardly. Are you happy at home? Because that might be reflecting at work. And it's a lot easier to be unhappy at work where you don't spend the rest of your life with those coworkers as, with your own family. And if you are struggling with issues, like we all are, I tell everybody, I go to therapy. Skinny John Goodman goes to therapy because I've got stuff in my life as well too. But take some time and go seek professional help and see what it is, because a lot of this, and the goal isn't happiness, the goal is happier. Right? Earlier we were talking about you lost your father 15 years ago. I lost mine a year and a half ago. And I remember the day that we lost him, it was hell. It was horrible. I had never lost a parent. Or someone that close, but I can be happier tomorrow. I can do the stuff, I can do the work. It doesn't mean I miss dad and I'm sad, but my life can be happier today. It can be happier next week. So the goal isn't happiness, because you can't say, I'm going to be happy and plateau. I mean, that's ridiculous, but take a look inward and reach out. And one of the cool things, one of the most determinants of people who work happy is if they have one friend that they confide in, right? Whether there's an issue with your boss or with your coworker, but someone who gets what you do, because like my wife, Becky, she works at a bank. So she has all her friends and all those dynamics. I don't know those friends and I don't know those dynamics, but she's got a couple of friends at work. And if something is sideways, like maybe a client issue or something, she can go talk to that person like, oh, this is what I've done, or have you tried this or that? Whereas me, I'm too close, we're married, and I don't know the dynamics. So if you have one friend that you can confide with, go for lunch, go for coffee, it helps us a lot more to have that happiness, joy, and purpose.
I think you said a lot of really important things right there. First and foremost is, how are you going to make other people happy if you don't take care of yourself first? I think you got to start inward, like they say on the airplane. Put your mask on first, and then help the next person. That is super important. And also, a lot of our listeners today are CEOs and founders, and that's a lonely job, because you can't necessarily come to your spouse about it, and there are certain things that you may not want to talk to some of your direct reports about. So that's why I always recommend as well, get a coach or join a mastermind or somebody who is maybe in a similar situation to you, where you can kind of open up and have those conversations.
Yeah. And, and thank you, Rob K, for connecting the two of us. But Rob is one of those guys that, if I'm having a bad day, I can reach out to him. He's not my wife. He's not my kid. He's not my client. Because like you said, it's lonely at the top. and you don't want to barf and be extremely, I mean, you want to be vulnerable with your staff, right? I remember talking to one CEO after I'd given a keynote, and I noticed that he was tearing up when I was talking about my stepdaughter losing her dad. And afterwards, I went to check in on him out in the hallways when nobody was around. I said, hey, Tony, I just want to make sure that you're okay. I hit a nerve, I think, and he goes, you know what? I brought you in so that my staff would talk about mental health and reach out. He goes, but I found out that I needed to. I'm alone at the top. I don't have that person to talk to. And he goes, it took me back. And he said, I lost my brother to suicide when I was 15. And back then, they never talked about it, right? And so here was a CEO, probably 30, 40 years later, having a conversation with a random stranger who had given a talk. And we had a connection. And I said, you know what? Do you have any other CEOs that you can talk to? So he's now found a master group like you did, right? He's found a coach. And I have CEOs and leaders talking to me because I'm once removed, right? Or a partnership like you and I have. I feel very comfortable that I can tell you anything now, right? Just on a phone, because we're once removed. And I think, if people are struggling with their happiness, the quickest way to turn your day around is to serve somebody else. And I know that sounds foreign to a lot of people, but if you're having a crappy day, go and help somebody else, whether it's at your church or an organization. I belong to a group of guys here in town. We serve the homeless. We go to the Christian Aid Center once a month, and we cook. Dudes, 5, 6 of us in the kitchen, cooking for 100 homeless people. And never has one person walked out of there going, oh, this sucks, right? So the quickest way is to serve somebody else, and it'll turn your day around.
Speaking of comedians, one great memory I had that made me feel really, really good was several years ago. And I mentioned this to you when I was on your show. You had a great podcast. My buddy Dean Delray brought me in for Christmas Day. I was down in Los Angeles, and they served food to the homeless at the Comedy Store. And I got to come in, and I was in the assembly line, and right next to me was Dane Cook. I didn't say anything to him outside of hello. But I remember, Greg, and I think I was going through a breakup or something then. But how great I felt leaving that day, knowing that I served and got to help these people who maybe were less fortunate. So I think that is a really good idea of how to get out there, and maybe if you're feeling bad about yourself, serve somebody else.
I was going to say, chances are probably that's why Dane Cook was there, right? Because a lot of comedians, it's a long. You're on the road. You typically you're not dating someone specifically, and that's a perfect example, right? Comedians who make everybody else laugh, they're not feeling well, and they're like, well, how do I feel better? And they're serving the homeless people, and I think that's a great example as well.
So taking it to the corporate world, if I'm a leader, how much of it is my responsibility to see, really connect to make sure that my people are feeling well? And do you have any tips or recommendations besides just asking them, how are you really doing today twice, which is a good one. Yep. But how do you open the door and create that safety where they feel like they can feel comfortable to come to you? Because a lot of people are really struggling with being able to talk about their mental health.
Yeah. No, those are two great points. I think it is. I think it's both on the leader and anybody in an organization. I've worked with organizations where it's kind of been a groundswell, where 3 or 4 people will start serving other people, or doing this, or having a pub night or a game night, and getting people together outside of work and going, okay, how do we make this better? But as a leader, a manager, CEO, whatever, it is part of your responsibility. If you want a culture that is fun and people want to show up and work, and they want to tell their friends, like, well, hey, I worked down at ABC Book or whatever, right? That is part of your responsibility. I think one of the easiest ways is to show empathy and to be open. And when a leader can be in front of his team and they feel like they can have a conversation, or if you are a leader and you've gone to therapy. I was talking to one gentleman after a talk, and he said, well, how do I talk to my team? I don't know anything about mental health. And I said, well, have you gone to therapy before? And he said, absolutely. He said, back in college, I was struggling with taking tests, and I would get all freaked out and have this anxiety. And so my parents found a therapist. I went to 4 or 5 sessions. We figured out. and he gave me tools how to get through those tests, and I still use them today in work. I said, well, share that story and let me know how it goes. And so he said in one of his team meetings it wasn't to everybody, but he encouraged his managers to share a story if they had one. So it's not a secret. Like, it was in college. He struggled taking a test. It wasn't anything too big, but he said he shared that with his team, his manager team, and that he had gone to therapy 30 years ago in college, and it helped him. And he said, Greg, it was unbelievable. I've been CEO here for 21 years, and never has anybody ever talked to me about my mental health. And he said, after I shared that story, I had 5 managers come up to me and saying, hey, I'm struggling. How do I get help? So it's, and I tell people like, oh, it's really hard to talk about mental health. It's awkward. It's weird. And so I share, I go, well, it was probably a little bit awkward the first time you rode a bike. Might have felt weird. You may have fallen off, but now you know how to ride a bike. It's easy. You don't even think about it. And then I take it one step more because of my comedian background. I said, or maybe, the first time you had sex might have been a little bit awkward. In my case, I fell off.
Yeah. Well, first, yeah, I love that. And what it really sounds like with that CEO, which I think is so true, is that he came across as really authentic and genuine. Yeah. And people want to report and work with people that feel like real people that they can connect with, as their boss or not their boss. Now, with that being said, I mean, this world that we live in is different than when you and I were growing up, right? Where I watched Bad News Bears the other day, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this movie would be canceled so quickly.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that you don't cross the line, whether it's either asking questions about mental health or offending somebody that's going to get you in trouble with HR? Yeah,
well, I think it just depends. I'm pretty much an open book, so for me it would be different. But have an idea, and I don't think you can cross the line if you have that empathy, and your people know that you care about them, right? And as a CEO and as a business, the goal is to make money and to make a profit. But I'm trying to flip that and saying, let's put our people first. Let's give them the tools so that they can succeed. And that's where the profit happens. And that's where you're going to keep your people. A recent study showed that to replace someone, it's up to 200% of their salary, plus however long. So if somebody's making 50 grand, by the time you get rid of that person, find another person, hire them, train them, it's $200,000. And then you hope that they're a good fit. But yeah, obviously we need to be very PC and HR approved. But there are so many things that you can do, and even humor. And you and I were talking about the humor lab, right? There's so many memes that you can send out. Like maybe it's every Friday. Just send out, hey, I saw this. I thought everyone would have a great laugh, and that endears people and it connects people, because when we laugh, we connect, and when we connect, our hearts opened up, and when our hearts opened up, then we can have the one-on-one conversations.
So I want to get into in a second to the work you do at Work Happy with your customers. But you brought up a point right there, making people laugh, connecting. What if I'm somebody who's listening who says, great, that people like Damon and Greg, maybe that comes easy for them, but I'm not a very funny person. I don't know I've never been good at making people laugh. How do you help those individuals?
There is no help.
They're just done.
No, but even a silly dad joke. Like when does a joke become a dad joke? When it becomes apparent. Horrible, right? You groaned. Terrible. I know you groaned. I didn't hear it, but you groaned. Even simple stuff like that. But humor is very subjective, and it's very different, right? When I'm up on stage and speaking, it's very HR approved, but I like dark humor, right? Stuff that makes you laugh. But even if you tell a dad joke, or if you send a Far Side cartoon or something, maybe something that you heard, make sure it's HR approved. But my dad would try and tell jokes, but we'd laugh because it was so dry, or sometimes the punchlines didn't make sense. But, have that conversation, or ask somebody else. You have a joke, or, I mean, I don't know if you've heard of YouTube.
No.
But it's YouTube. You have to spell it out. But there's so much on there too, right? That's obviously find something that's HR approved and share it with people. So you don't even have to be necessarily funny, but what makes you happy, right? And share that with other people.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of YouTube, I was watching this video of one of your podcasts, I believe, and I thought I was looking at Prince Harry.
I'd let myself go.
Yeah. So what are some of the tools, one or two tools that you work with your clients that you could share with our audience today that maybe they can, after watching or listening to this, they can try for themselves?
Yeah. Number one, I would say stop chasing happiness. And I say that because I've done that, right? Once I find the right girl to marry, once I make a certain amount of money, once I get enough clout at my job, stop chasing that. What makes you happy? Is it coloring? Is it basket? Whatever that is. But take time out for yourself. And I think it's very important. I get up at 5 o'clock every morning in the first hour and a half. I go to the gym. Although if you're watching the video, you might not agree or believe that. But I
well, Greg, you can't outrun the spoon. Maybe you're just like me. Maybe.
Right. But I spend an hour at the gym. I do meditation. I do breathing exercises, and then I spend time reading. That's what brings me joy. Maybe it's a podcast, right? And depending on your taste of humor, Smartless is a great podcast to listen to.
I love it. It's my favorite. It's my absolute favorite.
Awesome.
Those guys are awesome.
Those guys. I mean, and my favorite part is the banter at the end of the show. Right when the guest is gone and it's not HR approved, you have to do that on your own. You don't want to play that at work and turn up the speakers. But it's those kinds of things. Take time for yourself. Be more selfish, right? When you get up in the morning, don't look at your phone until you spent that time working on you and your happiness. And a lot of people say, "Well, I'll just choose to be happy." Yeah, but you got to work at it, just like anything else. We have to work at our marriage. We have to work with our kids. We have to work at work. But take time for yourself. Be more selfish. Because I can't serve you or make you happy until I'm there.
What about, and I heard you speak about this, and I'm somebody who struggles with meditation. But okay. Maybe I got a little ADHD for sure. How do you help somebody break into meditation? Because I've heard you say a couple times about how that helped calm you down and really get your day off on the right track.
Yeah, no, I struggled with it too. I started meditating during COVID, and 3 minutes for me was a long time, but I stuck with it. I got an app on my phone. It's called Headspace, and it just walks you through. And now every morning I spend 20 minutes just alone. There's nobody. I mean, nobody in the house is awake. And sometimes
20 minutes. That's man. That seems like an eternity to try that.
I know, and I have ADHD, right? And sometimes I'll sit there. I'm like, this isn't working, and 5 minutes in, I'm done. But I think like anything else. I mean, whether it's sports or an opera singer, it takes practice. And I also would encourage people, if you think you might have ADHD, you probably do. That's been my experience. And a lot of people don't want to do medicine, which is fine. But what I found when I went to my doctor and when I went to my therapist, I need the meds. And they help me. And until that changes, but it's practice makes perfect. And the goal for me is meditation to me, it's not spiritual or to levitate or chant or anything. It's just, it helps me calm my mind down. And there's days where my days go sideways and they're not happy. I'll pull out my app and meditate again, whether it's 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, I can't get to 3 minutes. I got to get better at trying that. But one thing that does help me, especially if before I'm going into a tough conversation or maybe even a podcast where is just breathing in and out 10 times and trying to do my best to slow down. The other thing that I've heard you mention, which I think is interesting and really good too, is time blocking when it comes to happiness. Maybe can you share that one a little bit, because I think that is a practical thing somebody could actually set aside and do.
Yeah. And for me, the first hour and a half is all about me. And then I start to work, and, I have in my calendar, 15 minutes before lunch, which, in 30 minutes, I'm going to sit down on YouTube and either listen to one of my favorite comedians or find somebody else and laugh, whether it's me. And like we were talking earlier, what if I don't have a sense of humor? You're going to find something like that. I connected with a guy. I've been trying to get a hold of him and have him hire me to come speak at his conference. And I sent him a video 3 days ago, and he said, I am still laughing. I can't stop laughing. My wife is now laughing, and it totally changed my day. He goes, when do you have time to talk? I did nothing, but a guy who made me laugh. And before I said, hey, what's your level of humor? Is it HR? Is it R? Is it a dry humor? And I sent him this thing. And so it can be like that. And just, taking time for yourself. And if you have the opportunity, if you are having a crappy day, restart your day. Or if you have the opportunity, go home and do what makes you happy. For me, it's either go golfing or I take a hot bath with a glass of wine. I know it's weird, but it's just me in the tub chilling out, and that resets it for me.
So when you're working with your clients that work happy, what is the biggest pain point that you've seen, let's say, over the last 90 days that you're help solving for?
I think the biggest pain is just the level of stress, right? We're going through all this political right now. We're asked to do more with less time. We're, John quit. We need you to take over his job. So now you're doing 2 jobs, and they didn't double your salary. But it's just that it's the stress load. And I think that when we do take the time to take care of ourselves and de-stress, we're more focused. For me, I set my alarm for 45 minutes. And so I'll work for 45 minutes, and then I'll get up, and whether it's changing laundry or take the dog for a walk or watch YouTube videos, whatever it is, for 15 minutes, it resets my brain. And studies show that you'll get more done by taking a 15-minute break every hour than sitting at your desk for 8 hours straight. But yeah, stress is the big one.
Yeah, especially if you get the opportunity to get up and walk around. I've always found if I'm stressed, if I can just pull myself away from my desk, maybe put some music on and just go for a walk around the block, it's kind of frees you up and ideas come into your mind. So working with your customers, is it mostly through like keynotes? Is it coaching? Or how is it that you get this behavior change or you get these organizations, cultures to become more happy organizations?
Yeah, typically it's been the keynoting and giving people these ideas. But now they are asking me to come back. How do we instill this with their people? And so I do a lot of workshops, a lot of training. And I know when people hear training and workshops, they're like, oh, great. But we have fun. I infuse.
Hey, we can't cut down training and workshops. That's what we do.
I know. That's what you do. But you do it in a way too, right? You have that personality, but you're not reading off a PowerPoint, turning around going, oh.
Nobody wants that.
Right? You're telling stories. And I have the advantage of, doing stand-up for all these years that I share funny stories. Like a quick one, I got to open up for Norm Macdonald, another hero of mine. I was MC. Just brilliant, a brilliant mind. And so I was emceeing, and before you bring up the headliner, you tell one more joke so people can go for a smoke break or get a drink or go to the bathroom. And typically, Norm's he was doing comedy for all those years, right? And he knows how it works. But some days it just doesn't work out. So I told my 5-minute joke, and I'm like, hey, are you guys ready for a headline? And the place went nuts. Like, people paid $100 to come in and see him. There's 300 people. Well, the club manager comes running on stage. He's like, Greg, you got to tell one more joke. Norm's not ready.
Oh.
And so I went back to the microphone and I said, hey, everybody, I got to tell one more joke. Norm's taking a poop. And we all laughed. And I told another joke.
He probably appreciated that. Yeah.
Right? And so afterwards, we're sitting in the green room, and he's like, hey, Greg, it was great working with you. Looking forward to the rest of the weekend. He goes, great set. He goes, but the biggest laugh you got was just before you brought me up, but I didn't hear the joke. What was the joke? I said, I told the audience you were taking a poop, and he's like, I was. So here's a guy who's been doing comedy for 30 years, and he was sitting on the can, couldn't hear the joke. But it's stuff like that. It's breaking the patterns and having fun. Nobody wants to go to a job and sit there for 8 hours a day and not talk to anybody and just, get the deadhead from the screen. It's how do we connect? And yeah, it's all those things. But I think if we bring our personality to work, if we take care of ourselves, and if we show that we're human, we can laugh, we can have a good time, we're going to be more productive. We're going to have less stress. And you know what? It's going to show with our friends. And when we get home, if we're happy, what are our partner or our kids going to think? They're going to be happier as well too.
No, there's definitely they're not separate. I think that if you've got a stressful personal life, whether it's financial challenges, maybe relationship challenges, it's going to carry over into work and vice versa. What is another tip that you have for leaders to help make the work environment a little bit more fun?
Talk to your staff. Ask them what they want. I was working with an organization here in town, and for years and years, every Christmas, they give $1,000 bonus and a turkey to any family, whether you've been there for a week or 15 years. And he said it was great, but he said after a while, they started having people like, I'm a vegetarian or, whatever. And so he went and talked to his staff. And what he found was a lot of his staff were vegetarian. They didn't want the turkeys. They couldn't sell the turkey, whatever it was. And one lady came to him and she's like, well, I got an extra check, but that doesn't cover my childcare. Can you help with childcare? And so they now have a childcare assistance program for those who need it. Right? Instead of $1,000, they're doing it in a different way. So ask your people what they need, right? Because we're all different. We grew up in different years. We grew up with different families. We grew up with different values. And one thing doesn't fit everybody. So if you have those conversations, do employee surveys and find out what your team wants. What do they want in the workforce? Do they want a day a week that they dress up in sports gear, or do they want a summer barbecue? Ask.
I think that's really important because sometimes we just assume everybody's like us and want the same thing. And one of the things that I've found for sure is that great leaders are almost like chameleons. They can adapt to and get to, and they ask and they listen and they treat people differently, because different people want different things and people love it. Like we've already mentioned, they love being heard and feel like they belong and taken care of. And, whether somebody's a vegetarian or maybe, they don't want a gift card to the movie theater, they want something else. So it's just getting to know your people.
Yeah. And that'll allow you, because I think, at least this is me, people want to feel like they're safe, that they're valued, and that they can go home at night and have fun with their family or their kids or their friends or whatever it might be, right? It's not all about work. Yes, we have to work hard and we have to do what's right, but people want to be safe. They want to be heard, and they want to be happy.
Can you share one really rewarding experience you've had with working with a customer? Doesn't matter who the customer is, but like the takeaway from it.
Yeah, absolutely. This just happened today. I was hoping you were going to ask that question. So I was speaking in Toronto. There was 500 healthcare workers. Afterwards, a guy came up to me and said, "Hey, thank you for that." He goes, "I started going to therapy. It's been great." So we kind of had a quick conversation. And then that night we went downstairs and a couple of guys brought out their guitars. We're at the hotel lobby bar, and it turned into about 40 or 50 people from this conference. We were singing, Tom Petty and the Beatles and the Tragically Hip. It was just a great night. And afterwards, I was walking back to my hotel room, and he caught up with me and he said, "Hey, I've got a buddy, and he's always struggled with his mental health. I don't know how to have a conversation with him and say, hey, have you really tried this?" And so I shared the same things that I said with you. Share a story of what you've done, how it's helped you. No judgment, and just be there with empathy. Listen and care and love on the guy. And so we had a couple more conversations since then. And I got a text today from him, and this is so cool. He sent me a text from his buddy, and it says, "Hitting therapy next week. Thanks for listening." And then the guy I know said, right on, man. I'm proud of you. It's a big step. You've got this. I called my wife at work, and I typically don't call my wife. She's like, what? Are you okay? And I go, I have to read you this text. It's not about me. It's about being human, and it's about asking that question, how are you really doing? I struggle. I go to therapy. And here's a guy who's refused therapy for however many years. But because of one more conversation, he's going to try it out. And that's the magic of, talking to people and just caring and loving on people. And we don't do that enough.
I'm with you on that. That's a wonderful story. And earlier on, we're going to wrap up here in a second, but earlier on, I mentioned that you're in your TED Talk, you have 3 great stories. I'm sure you have plenty of more great stories. And how Robin Williams said, make people happy, keep doing what you're doing because you never know what they're going through. But I was hoping you can share the story about the father and son.
Yeah. Hopefully I don't cry. Sometimes on stage I do. So again, he told me, keep making people happy. You'll never know the difference you make. 3 years later, I was running my own weekly comedy show. We have 30, 40 people at a hotel lobby bar. And you never know who you're going to run into or whatnot. And one night I was emceeing, so I'd bring up the other comedians who were funnier than I was, and just kind of keeping the show going. And about 5 minutes in, a father-son walked in, and they sat down in the front row, and they didn't look like they were there for comedy. They had their arms crossed, and they put their feet on my stage. I'm like, how dare you? Right, but they weren't smiling. They weren't having a good time. And I thought of what Robin Williams said, make people happy. And so something in my head switched where I wanted to give them the opportunity to laugh instead of receive the laughs, right? It was about others instead of me. And they started to laugh and have a good time. And at one point I said, hey, you guys thirsty? And so I kind of yelled to the bartender at the back of the room. I said, hey, bartender, can another round of drinks for everybody and put it on these guys' tab. So they kind of laughed at that. And it was a great show. By the end, they were having a good time. They looked like they should be at a comedy show. And so me being curious afterwards, I walked up. I said, hey, I'm Greg. Thanks for coming. How did you find out about the show? And the father said, well, we've been walking past the show for the last 8 weeks, but we've never stopped in. And I said, 8 weeks? He goes, yeah, we're staying in the hotel. My wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so we're here, stay in the hotel. We take care of her. We take her to doctors, visit with her, however we can make it comfortable for her. I said, well, I'm sorry to hear that. And my next logical question, I turned to the son. I said, hey, how's mom doing? He started to tear up, and it got really awkward. And he said, mom passed away this morning. I lost it. And so there's 3 guys in a hotel lobby bar after a comedy show, hanging on to each other, hugging each other, and crying. And that is when I learned what Robin Williams meant. Because the dad, after a couple minutes, he said, thank you for making us laugh. It's the first time he felt normal in 8 weeks. And I will never forget that. They came to the show, and I'm like, why are these guys not laughing? We have no idea what the other person is going through. And that's one of my favorite quotes of all time. It's by Robin Williams. It's on my wall. It says, you meet people, you have no idea what they're going through. Be kind always. And that'll stick with me forever, because they were there and they were laughing. For that 30 minutes, they forgot that mom was no longer with them. And it didn't get rid of their pain, but it got them through it. And I hang on that, and I encourage everybody. We never know whatever somebody else is going through. So let's be kind. Let's take the high road and say, hey, how are you really doing? I've got time for coffee. Let's go.
That's such a powerful story. And it just makes me think, like when you're at a grocery store and maybe you're checking out and the checker's in a terrible mood, and instead of stopping at them, you just don't know what's going on, right? And it's good to keep that in mind. Thank you for sharing. And I also, kind of recap what you're saying. I think a very important thing is maybe it doesn't cure it for him, but it helps. Happiness can help you get through a situation, or just move move on. Because, as hard as it is losing your father and me losing my father, it never goes away. But, it does get a little bit better over time, and you have no choice, but you have to go on. And so kind of recapping what we talked about, it's so important to put other people first. Don't make it about yourself when it comes to leadership. But also on the flip side, you do need to be selfish and take care of yourself. You gave some great tips about, what you do waking up in the morning, scheduling times to be happy, and maybe get a laugh out there. So those are awesome. I really appreciate it. And some ideas of what leaders can do to just actually ask questions and listen. And like you mentioned a couple times, ask, how are you really doing a second time? And you'll be surprised at what people say. What's one more thing you want to leave our audience with before we close out?
Be kind. Connect. Tell people who you love that you love them, right? I mean, whether it's a relationship, a spouse, or your kid. And don't just text it to them. Pick up the phone and say, hey, you know what? I miss you. I love you. Thank you for being my kid. I think we've gotten too social. They call it social media. I disagree. But just be kind and connect and let the people you know that you care about them. I think that's the best thing we can do. And in order to do that every day, we need to take care of ourselves and love yourself, right? Most importantly is because how can I say I love you, brother, if I don't love myself?
Yeah, that's so important. You gotta love yourself first. And I know firsthand it makes me feel good. Like talking to just one of my buddies the other day, and before he hung up, he's like, "Hey, man, I love you, man." And it just makes you feel good. It just makes you feel good. So, where can our audience connect with you at?
I'm everywhere on social media at Greg Kettner or just gregkettner.com. But if you have any questions or if you're struggling, again, I'm not a therapist. I'm Damon. I'm a can opener. For whatever reason, after having a conversation, people feel that, oh, okay, if Greg can go to therapy, I can do that too. So, if anybody's struggling or if you're a leader and you need some help with your organization, more than happy to take some time and give you some tips and tricks on how to do that.
And your humor lab as well has over 40,000 subscribers.
Yeah. So that was born out of, we were a month into COVID, and I was like, how am I going to connect with people and make people laugh? And I was like, well, I'll just create a group on Facebook. And so I set up this group. It's non-political. It's PG-13. And I sent it out to 20 of my buddies. I woke up the next morning, there was 153 people in it. I'm like, oh, I've hit something. And 4 years later, there's 40,000 people. I've not spent a dime on advertising or anything. It's just people going, I need to laugh. And I get messages all the time from people. Thank you so much for, and again, it's not me. It's just, it's a group think tank. Everybody, there's horrible puns and there's stuff that I have to pull down, but it's just a place where you can go and for 5 minutes, recharge and go from there.
I'll put it in the show notes, and it just goes to show you how many millions of people out there who just are looking for ways to just feel happy or connect. So, yeah. Greg, thank you so much. You're awesome. Listener,
thank you, buddy.
Listeners, audience, do me a favor. If you know somebody out there who maybe is a little down on themselves or maybe been considering going to therapy, but they haven't, you got to send them this. Or if you know somebody who's a leader and maybe their culture sucks, for lack of a better term, and they could use learning how to loosen up, or somebody who just needs a good laugh, send them this episode. I guarantee they'll find some value in it. And until next time, everybody, do me a favor, stay curious, keep learning, and have a great day. Greg, you're awesome, buddy. Thank you, man.
Great. Thanks, Damon. I love you, man.
I love you too.
The most important thing is, even if the role is outside of what your comfort zone is going to be, does the environment feel right for you? And that environment